Our first aid kits are relatively sparse. Mine mainly consisted of a few different types of pills, the multivitamin being the most important because the food that we were eating doesn't have all the nutrients that you need. So I took those, I don't know, every other day on average. And I also had some allergy medicine just in case. I actually ended up never taking it, but I wanted to be prepared in case I needed it. And other than that, leukotape was the other major component of my medical kit. Leukotape's great for covering up blisters or hot spots before they become blisters. And I figured if I had any other cuts or anything like that, I would just throw leukotape on it. Never really needed it for anything like that. The one time I did sprain my ankle, I used it as a supporting tape, and it was fine for that too. So definitely recommend leukotape. And besides those two things, I had a small pocket knife, which had a set of tweezers on it, just in case I ever got a tick, and I did not.
So I had a very similar first aid kit. I guess I carried the multivitamins and I also had an iron supplement, and I took both of those every single day. And then I also added to mine some codeine with the idea that if I needed to take painkillers, I'd want good painkillers. And actually, we only used one of those pills on the whole trail.
And that was for my sprained ankle.
Yeah. And I guess as well, instead of having a tweezers for ticks, I carried a tick key, which I also never needed to use. Also had a handful of band-aids, which I used on occasion, but they're not really that necessary. They're easy to use. So I didn't really deal with any major injuries on trail. For me, the main thing that was bothering me, I had cracked heels quite a lot. So I wore sandals for the whole trail. Well, I wore sandals for most of the trail. Really close to the start, I got really badly cracked heels, and my way of dealing with it then was to just chuck on a pair of shoes for about 100 miles. But later on in the trail, when I got cracked heels, I would super glue them shut if I had access to super glue, and then just chuck some tape on them. And I ended up taping my feet, every maybe third day for the second half of the trail. But for me, I guess I was willing to do that to be able to keep wearing sandals.
And my only injuries had to do with shoes as well. At the beginning of the trail, I was wearing some already used Lone Peak 4s that I had been training in. And I think that they just kind of ran out of cushion and ended up giving me a heel issue. And then I think I sprained my ankle around the same time. So I kind of looked around for different kinds of shoes, and I tried a couple things out before settling on the Timp 1.5. But in that time, I leukotaped my ankle. I tried KT tape, and just to give it some support. But after I got that all sorted out around Hot Springs, was it?
Yeah.
Then we were good the rest of the trail, really.
We both had a pretty bad run with sickness pretty close to the start of the trail. It started out coming into Gatlinburg at Newfound Gap. The weather was really bad and the road was closed, so the shuttle wasn't running. And there ended up being somewhere between 30 and 40 people sitting in the bathrooms at Newfound Gap, which was warm, wet, and we were sitting in there for maybe 4 or 5 hours. Mm-hmm. And eventually we got a ride down to Gatlinburg, and lo and behold, the next day I came down with a stomach virus, probably norovirus. You're never quite sure about that. So at that point I had to take a couple of days off. I just had one extra 0 day there to try and get over that. But that was kind of the start of sickness for us. We were fine leaving Gatlinburg a couple of days later, and then the day before we got to Hot Springs, I got sick again, to the point where I actually curled up in my tent on the trail about 6 miles before Hot Springs, and I said, Raiden, you go ahead, I'll catch you up, I'm just going to rest for a little bit. And then I very quickly decided that I wasn't going anywhere, and some fantastic people gave me a ride from the gap where I had set up into Hot Springs, which was kind of the second bit of sickness. And then from there, I guess you started getting sick. So that was...
Yeah, before we even got outside of Hot Springs all the way. Well, we tried to leave town, and we're walking along the river that leaves Hot Springs, probably a mile or two outside of town, not even. And we set up camp there for the evening, and I then stayed there for the next couple of days, and we kind of hung out while I went through the same symptoms that she had in Gatlinburg.
Yeah. And then, only a few days later again, after we hiked from there onto Irwin, you got sick again.
Yeah. So I never really got over the sickness in Hot Springs, and by the time we got to Irwin, my parents came to visit us there and picked us up, took us out. We had Mexican that evening, and I got sick again in the hotel. Ended up taking another 0 the next day. And then I felt great, I thought, laying in the hotel room the next morning. Good morning. Still not sure I want to get out of bed yet. It's so soft. We ended up taking off, and that day, the first day out of Irwin, ended up being, I think, my worst day on trail. It was cold, and my lips got blue. It was raining, and we did not make it very far before I had to kind of emergency set up camp and get in and warm up. And that was as bad as I remember feeling the whole trail.
So for us, dealing with sickness, it's really, really difficult to deal with being sick on trail. The best thing to do if you're getting sick is to get off trail, get in a hotel or a hostel or something like that, and wait for it to pass. The hostels, particularly in Hot Springs, were very against having anybody who had any sign of sickness staying there. And I actually had to go to the doctor in Hot Springs for them to say that I was okay to be staying in a hostel facility before they would let us stay at Elmer's there. But at the same time, not having access, if you were camping and not having access to a bathroom or anything like that, would be infinitely worse.
Yeah, for you and everybody around you too, because that's kind of how it's passed, is in crowded shelters, or in our case, crowded bathrooms or whatever, and just people being around each other like that. And in the bubble going northbound, seems like almost everybody gets it at some point, though some were lucky enough to get past without getting that around there.
So while we were dealing with sickness, we ended up having 8 0 days over the course of about 16 days. So effectively every second day off for 2 weeks, which was a lot for us. We weren't anticipating it. We started the trail, we were making really good time. And then we just got hit by this, and I remember meeting a lot of people who sort of said to us, we never thought we'd see you again, but
they caught up.
They caught up because we got so sick.
Weight loss on trail was something that I had to be concerned with before I ever started, because my body weight, it was so low to begin with that I knew if I lost more than 10 or 15 pounds, I would start to feel pretty sick. So I started calorie loading early on, going into the trail, planning to prevent weight loss, because it turns out that most people do lose some weight on trail, even eating more than 4,000 calories a day, up to 6,000 people oftentimes lose weight. And I did end up losing a little weight at the beginning, especially around the time that I got norovirus, just a few pounds, and then ended up gaining quite a bit of it back, and actually going above where I had started, probably as some of the fat that I had turned into muscle as I hiked more and more. And so it was something that I was always conscious of, but never had to worry too much about after I got settled into a good diet and everything. Did you lose weight?
I did. So I ended up losing a little over 20 pounds, or about 10 kilos, over the course of the trail. I also lost my weight mostly at the start, and then kind of balanced out as the trail went on. But for me, it wasn't a negative at all. I was perfectly happy to lose weight. And apart from the fact that when I got off trail, a lot of my clothes didn't fit very well anymore, I had no issues with it. I felt good on trail as far as energy and food requirements and things like that, so it wasn't a concern for me at all. I dealt with chafing a little bit on trail. I had it under my armpits where my bra and my arm would rub, and also in the middle of my back where my bra strap was. And I never really figured out exactly what was causing it. I thought at one stage that was my bra, and I switched my bra to a different one. I thought it might have been the back of my pack, and I changed the way that the back of my pack sat on my back, and that didn't fix it. So in the end, I ended up just putting some Luca tape over the bits that were chafing and just leaving it there. And I had one piece of Luca tape on my back for a couple of weeks, just to stop that rubbing. And that worked as a great solution for me. I've never had any rubbing again since, and I've never had any rubbing before the Appalachian Trail using the same bra and the same bag. So I don't know what caused it, other than, I guess, lots of damp, because that's the thing that was different about the Appalachian Trail was that it's so much damper than the Pacific Crest Trail was.
Right. So chafing is something that a lot of people deal with, and what's usually talked about is using Body Glide. I ended up not taking that with me and found a good alternative that I was already carrying, which is hand sanitizer. So the major thing that causes chafing is salt buildup on your skin, usually around your armpits and groin. And if you use a little hand sanitizer and kind of dissolve that salt away and then wash off in the stream if you can, that usually prevents the issue. And then if you do get chafing, like Chili did, putting Luco tape over it works really well. Yeah. Just like preventing blisters. You can prevent that rubbing if you put that on there. And then by not carrying Body Glide, we saved a little bit of weight, which I think was worth doing. And
also, I guess with the Luca tape is you put it on and then you just don't take it off.
Yeah.
Because
it stays on very well.
It sticks really well, and if you try and peel it off, you're going to irritate that skin that's been chafed, which is underneath it. So you just let it peel off in its own time.
Yep. And basically nip it in the bud. As soon as you start feeling that hot spot, get on it, because that's when you got to catch it. So my biggest concern when starting the trail was surrounding mosquitoes and ticks. The ticks carry a number of diseases that you can't get rid of once you get it, and mosquitoes are the same way, pretty dangerous and just really annoying. So one of my preventative measures through the whole trail was wearing long pants, and at the beginning I wore long sleeves as well. And that really helps with ticks getting on your legs, which is where they're going to first attach, and then usually they'll crawl up into warm regions on your body. And so if you can prevent that with tight fitting clothing, that's a really good first step. And beyond that, then we tried a number of different bug sprays, everything from Picardin and DEET and permethrin. And what it came down to for us was that DEET was by far the best solution. With Picardin, it seemed like sweat just on any normal day would wash Picardin off in, an hour or two probably?
It just felt like it didn't have any staying power, I guess.
Yeah.
Whereas the DEET, lasted a lot longer on our skin.
And we tried a couple different approaches using permethrin, from soaking all of our clothes in it for hours at a time to just spraying it on the clothes, and it seemed like nothing we did worked. Both of those things are described in the instructions, and maybe it worked at first.
Permethrin's meant to stay on your clothing for 6 washes. But on the trail, you start off thinking 6 washes, that's great. I barely wash my clothes at all. 6 washes could end up being half the trail. But the more we thought about it, we thought about, being out in the rain all day, or even just being really, really sweaty, and whether that counted as a wash. And, so if you are only able to wear the clothes for 6 heavy rain soakings, that could mean that your permethrin treatment's only going to last a week. So I think it worked at first when we first put on our clothing, but then the staying power again, I'm not sure how well it stayed. It's definitely better than not doing anything. Probably. Neither of us got ticks. So.
But there were instances twice that I can remember where we treated with permethrin, and then a couple of days afterward, we had ticks crawling on.
You had ticks crawling on you.
I had ticks crawling on my permethrin treated tights.
Yeah. So I guess the other thing that I did for bugs was once we hit bug territory, I started out wearing short sleeves and shorts on my bottom half as well. But when we got to the bugs, I just had a couple of days where I got absolutely eaten alive and I was done with it. So I bought a pair of tights, and the tights I bought had insect shield treatment on them. And I think the label said they were good for 60 or 70 washes, which was great in theory. Once again, I didn't have any ticks on me on those pants, but I did have mosquitoes biting me through my permethrin treated pants, which doesn't seem right.
So I think our conclusion is use DEET.
Yeah.
Use a lot of it.
Yeah.
And it's not the healthiest option, but it is, without a doubt, the best.
Yeah. We showered, I don't know, maybe once a week, once every 5 days at the start.
Yeah.
And then less and less as the trail went on.
Pretty much any time that you get a chance for a free or cheap shower, you would do it. Some of the like outdoors businesses, like the NOC, for example, would offer free showers for people coming there, or like the different gyms and things that we went to. So you could get a shower in various towns like that.
But then also, I guess, closer to the end, I don't remember where it was, there was that free shower. It was a coin-operated shower near that train station. And we decided not to shower. We were just like, we can go for a swim in the stream.
Yeah.
And decided not to do shower and laundry in that town. Don't know. We got a bit more lazy as well, I guess, as time went on.
You kind of get okay with the smell and then feel like you need to shower less. At which point the salt that accumulates on your body becomes the only issue with chafing. So if you can rinse that off in the river or whatever, then you don't really need to shower too much. At least you don't feel like you need to.
Yeah, the other thing, I guess, is because we're not carrying deodorant, you get clean in a shower, but then you put on clothes that still smell a little bit, and your body is going to start smelling again really quickly because you're not using deodorant or anything like that. So the effect of a shower is kind of diminished a little bit.
We brushed our teeth just about every day. I think Chili might have done it every day, and I did it more or less every day. We carried travel size toothpastes and then some kind of folding or collapsible toothbrush. A lot of people get a normal toothbrush and cut off half of it, for example, but you can find really lightweight collapsible or foldable toothbrushes at CVS or Walgreens, those type places.
Yeah, and also the travel size ones usually come with a little cover on them, which is
quite nice.
Much nicer. So I would carry my toothbrush and toothpaste in my fanny pack and try and brush my teeth while I walked along the trail at some point during the morning. And then I'd also try and brush them in the evening in the tent. And most of the time, if I brush my teeth in the evening, I would, I don't know, maybe 50-50 be brushing it outside before I went into the tent or just swallowing my toothpaste. Raiden would often spit it into his rubbish bag in the tent rather than going outside and
right, because toothpaste disposal after you use it is something to consider for leave no trace. So if you were to spit out a glob of toothpaste after you're done brushing your teeth, that could attract animals. So if you're going to spit it out, we always try to kind of disperse it. And then if you can just instead put it in a rubbish bag, that's probably all the better, or swallow it.
Swallowing it's not so good for you, but
no.
I figure
It's also
every
gross.
second day for a little while is not going to kill me, so.
Apparently not.
So I carried a Deuce of Spades trowel, a Ziploc bag full of toilet paper, and some hand sanitizer in the front of my pack to form my poop kit. And I would really only use that, dig a hole 6 to 8 inches deep off trail. As rarely as I possibly could. Because the Appalachian Trail has so many shelters along the way, it's pretty easy to use a privy to go to the bathroom if you need to. And, you know, it's not possible every time, but that was kind of my goal, was to use privies and then dig a hole if I had to. With peeing, it's pretty easy to just go off trail and find a little spot and go pee, and by the end of the trail I could do that without taking my pack off, which was really convenient. And then I carried a bandana to use as a pee rag so that I could dry myself off without needing to use toilet paper or anything like that.
Been using just the tip of my trekking pole to dig a hole for a couple of years now, and it's definitely a little bit harder, especially if the ground is cold, to get a hole that's at least 6 inches deep. But it's doable, and as infrequently as we actually had to dig holes versus using privies, it works fine, or worked fine for me, to not carry a spade or trowel of any kind. And then I did the same as Chili with carrying roll of toilet paper and hand sanitizer as well.
So a lot of people ask how I deal with periods on the trail, and my short answer is that I don't. I don't have periods because of the birth control that I use, which makes it absolutely fantastic on trail, something that I don't have to worry about. But for those who do have to deal with periods, the easiest answer is to use tampons and to pack them out once they're used, which is, I guess, kind of a little gross to think about, but it's what I used to do, and it's really not a very big deal to deal with.